proud chamber member.
And my name is Tina Murray. I am a mortgage agent with Dominion Lending Centers, also just located up the road, and I am also a member of the Chamber of Commerce.
First, we'd like to do North Grenville's land acknowledgement. The Municipality of North Grenville acknowledges that the municipality operates on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Anishinaabe Nation. We honor the historic relationship of the Haudenosaunee and Huron-Wendat peoples to this land. We recognize all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who now call North Grenville their home. We respect and support the need for cultivating a strong relationship with all Indigenous peoples, and we look forward to continuing this conversation and fostering the path towards reconciliation.
So the North Grenville Chamber of Commerce invites you to be one of the many businesses and organizations that each year participate in our programs that offer great member benefits. Through the leadership of our Board of Directors and Chair Karen Quigley, the Chamber is committed to maintaining and improving what we have to offer and building upon initiatives like the I Love NG campaign and business development opportunities that support our community through learning workshops, business promotion, and networking events. Many of our board members are here this evening in the room. We have, please stand so that everyone knows when I say your name. We have Alan McAvoy. We have myself, Tina Murray, Dana Conrad, Scott Waldron, and Lisa Hale are all in the room. And joining us via Zoom are Andre Rancourt, who is somewhere in Europe vacationing. We're not happy about that. Sorry, Andre. And our chair, Karen Quigley, is not feeling well, so she stayed home this evening. So I hope that some point in time at the end of the evening, you will stay around and get an opportunity to meet some of the board members of the Chamber. And once again, we just want to thank you all for joining us. And we also want to thank the municipality and Mayor Peckford for partnering with us on this very important event. We also wanted to highlight the incredible work that has been done by our past chair, Kathy Shepard, who is here in the room this evening. Thank you for your unwavering support over the last 7 years. You chaired, you were just such an active member of the Board of Directors, and we just thank you so much. As you move into retirement, now I don't know about all of you, but retirement to me is gonna look a lot different than it does to Kathy, because she didn't slow down. And so best of luck to you with your new role with the IPM. So thank you very much, Kathy.
We're also going to take a moment to honor a member of our business community that we've recently lost, Kika Smith. Her generosity to lend an ear or offer support was what made Kika so special to all of us in the business community, along, of course, with her coffees and soups and business support. Even at 7:15, when I'd Zoom through on my way into the shop, she always had a kind word and asked about your business. No matter what was going on in her own. Our community is grieving together and will support her business in the coming days and weeks. Brood Awakenings will be closed this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for the visitation and funeral, and reopens on Monday, April 4th. Let's take a moment to remember Kika.
So tonight's event is an opportunity to hear from our Mayor Peckford as we take a deeper dive into some of the issues facing the community and ask some questions directly to her. For those of you online, if you would like to ask a question or make a comment, then we just ask you to type it in.
I was just going to say we have it right here, so we'll be able to get to those later on in the program. Please enjoy some light refreshments that were offered by Catered Affairs. It's a COVID-safe and friendly refreshments. There's water on the table, coffee and tea at the back of the room. There's also courtesy bottles of hand sanitizer by our own Tina Murray.
Because I've got a sanitizer for that.
Wah, wah.
Sorry. The flowers on the table were generously donated by Jen LaBelle, owner of the flower shop. So Jen and her team, as you know, all of us know how talented she is, and they are such a large supporter of our community, and particularly the North Grenville Chamber of Commerce, as they've always provided the centerpieces for our renowned little black dress event, which is on again this year. So be sure to stick around after the event because we are going to give them away. So we want you to be able to take one of you from your table will be able to take a centerpiece home. And finally, we would be remiss without saying thank you to the live stream junkies who are offering this program virtually, and thank you.
Yeah. A few quick housekeeping pointers. Washrooms are located towards the main entrance of the building, so a little zig and a zag to the right. Emergency exit over at the back of the room here. Be very careful if you go and use the washrooms or leave the room, that you come back into the right room, because adjacent is the Sword Fighting Guild, and they're having a practice tonight. I don't know what practicing sword fighting looks like, but I'm not sure I'd want to.
Is there a medic in the room? So let's get started. We're going to talk a little bit about Mayor Peckford, so I hope she's not in the room and doesn't hear us.
Yeah.
Oops. Okay, so for those of you who don't know much about her, Ms. Peckford is originally from Newfoundland and Labrador. While this is the first time she's been elected into office, she comes from a long history and background into politics. In fact, her uncle was the Premier of Newfoundland and Labrador in the 80s.
In her 20s, just a few short years ago, Nancy moved to Ottawa to serve as a parliamentary intern on Parliament Hill, where she worked across party lines. She went on to lead a multi-partisan organization that encouraged and supported more youth and women to jump into the ring of politics. She and her family moved to North Grenville in 2011.
And in 2018, she decided to run for mayor and was definitely a force for change within the local political landscape. Since then, she and her council members have hit the ground running and have been truly working hard for this community. So welcome, Mayor Peckford.
There we go.
Okay, we'll sort out the mic. It feels very loud. Francois, are we okay, audio-wise? Okay, good, okay. All right, I don't know where to put that. What's interesting about this event, of course, Will and Tina, is when we did it last year, it was all virtual. So I was speaking into a big camera. I think I might have seen Francois, and really no one else. So I had no kind of visual cues of who was here and listening. And so it's a very different experience this year, of course, because of COVID. But I want to take the opportunity to thank the Chamber very much for agreeing to do what is our second annual address. And, you know, obviously from my perspective and council's perspective, it's just wonderful to be able to speak directly to you and to those who are online about what we've been up to, how we've endured COVID, our municipal budget, and some strategic planning things. But you know, most fun for me, of course, is the Q&A. So I really welcome that. And I thought what I would do first is just give you a few tidbits, if you will, and then we'll go straight into Q&A. I would like to, of course, recognize council colleagues. I think we have most in the room. Councillor O'Sullivan, where are you? There you are. Councillor Barkley is here. Our newly minted Councillor Deb Wilson, where are you, Deb? Oh, there she is. Excellent. And Councillor Strachan is also feeling unwell, so she's live streaming at home. Also, we have a number of municipal staff. I think they might be all over there, or some of them. I think our Director of Planning is here, our Chief Administrative Officer, Mr. Dyke. I do the glasses thing now, and I can't actually see the room with my glasses on. We've got Chief Oakham, Director of Public Works, Karen Dunlop, and Keena Boyce, who assists Mr. Dyke on a fairly regular basis. So welcome very much, and I would also like to say a warm word of welcome to my own father, Larry Peckford, who's in the back. And Larry was, he was the sign guy.
Well done.
During the campaign, and put up a lot of signs, repositioned a lot of signs, and obviously gave me some really great advice while Uncle Brian was his own force, certainly in the 1980s. The reality is my father had also run for municipal council, and when I decided to pursue this opportunity, we had many, many different chats about what I was bringing to the table and how I could be supportive of North Grenville. I'd also like to welcome Norma Fisher and thank Norma very much for being here. Norma turned 100, as some of you may know. Her and her late husband played an incredible role in the establishment of the library, among many other community initiatives. Norma and I more recently have had the chance to get together at our local Anglican church, where my son was baptized a couple of years ago. So it's really great to see Norma. Thank you, Norma, for coming. Thank you. Okay, so now I'll put the glasses on, which means I can't really see you. I apologize. So really, you know, the reality is I think when a council was elected, not to take you too far back to 4 years ago, but we, I think, are grounded in what the community was asking of us. It's no surprise to anyone in this room that you elected a brand new council. I came to learn shortly after being elected that we were one of like 3 municipalities, I think, in Eastern Canada, where every single member of council was newly minted. I think there were certainly some elected officials at other levels of government who said, I wonder how this is going to go. We hope it goes well. They're all rookies. We felt that, yes, we were certainly new to the role, but we brought a lot of depth and breadth through the variety of experiences and backgrounds we all had. Certainly I think most of you know, I'm a mom of 3 school-aged kids, and I, at the time in seeking election, was really seeing the community through the eyes of my own children, but also through the eyes of my parents, who were spending a lot of time in Kemptville supporting me as I was a working professional in Ottawa. So the realities of commuting, of raising a family, and at one point I was looking for temporary housing for my parents who were here a lot, and we thought that maybe they should look at being here sort of half-time, and some of the housing realities were made very clear in terms of access to affordable rental options, et cetera. So, but beyond myself, I think we're so blessed now as a council. Our council's evolved, of course. We have 2 new members. We really bring a variety of different experiences, and I think that really focused us through what was an energetic campaign. So, the way that I think we've approached things in the municipality, especially as it pertains to our community strat plan that I'm going to talk about and our most recent budget, is through collaborative leadership, partnerships with the community, including with the Chamber and BIA. That's been incredibly important to us. I'm really wanting to sustain, if not improve, what was already a very high quality of life, and I think people here are so proud of that, but they see a lot of change, and they want to make sure that that doesn't get lost. And as someone who came into the community as a newer resident, even though my children's great-grandmother had been born and raised on Bedell Road, really I didn't know Kemptville. I knew some stories about Kemptville and Oxford Mills, where my children's great-grandmother had attended school. So I'd gotten to know the community a little bit through my in-laws, but I didn't know Kemptville, North Grenville. So I was really coming in with fresh eyes. The other thing I think you all asked for, and those that are watching, is you wanted a really responsive municipal government. And I think that's certainly been part of our mantra, is to be extremely visible, to be accessible in a variety of different platforms, to make sure we do things like this, among many other things. I think it's not lost on residents and businesses in this community that we've done a lot of consultation over 3 years on a variety of things. And when I talk about the community strategic plan, one of the things we were most proud of is that we had 2,000 respondents to a general survey that was one of the main tools for how, in fact, we were identifying priorities, because it wasn't about council. It truly was about the community. Mr. Dyke, our Chief Administrative Officer, who comes very seasoned and had lots of experience with community strategic plans. Also, I worked with his staff to lead a variety of stakeholder sessions, and many of you may have been tapped through an advisory committee. So we really wanted to take the pulse of the community and come up with a strat plan that I think really reflected not just where we've been or where we're at, but where we wanted to go, and I think that's the key to any good strat plan. So the roadmap, that we developed, I think made really, I think to the best of our ability, given what we know now and coming out of COVID, which certainly I think changed all of our perspectives to some extent, particularly around how people work, because many more people are working from home now. And one of the great things about that is I did these business check-ins throughout all of last year, and as much as businesses, experienced unprecedented disruptions and massive stress, we also heard some of our smaller business owners say, the community fell in love with us again, or the community discovered us for the first time. And I remember when I was canvassing, being in a variety of different subdivisions sometimes, and people were either new to the community or hadn't really taken the time to look around because they were so used to going to Ottawa or going to Brockville or going to Barrhaven, just going outside of municipal borders for what they needed. And I think one of the silver linings, and I don't want to diminish the stress, not every business had that experience, but certainly I think of the Home Hardware downtown, where they really have certainly highlighted to me that a clientele discovered them that typically wouldn't have necessarily, looked to our small, but I think dynamic downtown for that kind of service. So, the intention with this strategic plan, that being said, was to really think about how to balance rural and urban realities. 2/3 of our population is rural. Many people move here for a small town experience, but yet we see high rates of growth, both in rural areas and urban areas. That's what's interesting. You might see a lot of urban growth, and that's true, especially commercially and in some of our subdivisions that are closer to town. But there's been a lot of rural growth too. And in fact, Mr. Dyke and I were speaking just before this event, and he reminded me that our growth over a census cycle, which is about 4 years, is 9%. It's twice the provincial average, and it's not because of COVID. The previous census cycle, which was, I don't want to do the math, 11 to 15 or 12 to 16, whatever it was, also had North Grenville at 9% growth. So our growth is consistent. It has accelerated during the pandemic. There's no doubt, but in terms of the math, it's about 9%. So, for many, that's a good news story, right? You want to be a growing town. I sit around a county's table, right? I'm one of 10 mayors at the United Counties of Leeds and Granville, and not every town is growing. And some towns and municipalities spend a ton of energy and time looking at how to grow. How do they attract new businesses, new homes? That is not the position we're in, clearly. But what that means is that we need to pursue sustainable growth. And I think Councillor Barkley will remember the many conversations we had early in our mandate about sustainability. Councillor Strachan, who isn't in the room with us, is very passionate about climate change and pursuing environmental goals, and we established an environmental action committee that's been very productive. We also established, one of my commitments was to establish an agricultural and rural affairs committee, and that has been, I think, equally interesting in terms of who's come to speak to us and join that committee, and we've got big ag and little ag, and we can talk more about the international plowing match when we get to questions. So really the point of the strategic plan, just to finish, was to really wrap our heads around rural urban growth and how do you do that well. And I think one of the advantages the municipality now has, and council by extension, is that we were able to renew our municipal leadership team. We're politicians, we think we know a lot, but often what we're relaying are the concerns of the community. The expertise lives here and over here, I can't see everyone, and we've really, I think, benefited from incredible expertise, both new and seasoned. Certainly Chief Oakham, Karen Dunlop, certainly were with us prior to Mr. Dyke's arrival, but I think what we have now is an incredibly coherent senior management team. I don't go into a conversation with Mr. Dyke or another member of the senior management team where they're already grounded in best practices. They're looking around for what are other municipalities bigger than us, smaller than us, what are they doing well? So we're not making it up as we go along. But at the same time, as council knows, we've always talked about, and Deputy Mayor Jim McManaman, who, as you know, is in Cape Breton, living his best life. We're so happy for him. He used to say, I want a North Grenville standard. Like, I want us to be the best. I want to define what, sustainable growth looks like, or I want to define, what a vibrant business community is. Let's set, the definition for ourselves. And I think we're doing some of that. And I think the talent we're attracting to the municipality will equip us in the long run to be outstanding. One of the things we did during our community strategic planning process, and again, not to overstate it, but Mr. Gary Dyke had come from a municipality, Cambridge, where they had aggressively pursued ISO certification through a global community of data-driven cities. And him and his colleagues set their minds to becoming ISO certified. So as we're doing a community strategic planning process, we're collecting thousands of data points. I don't know if Hillary Janou is here. Is Hillary here? So Hillary was one of the key people who collected that data, and we learned a lot about ourselves as a consequence of that process. So 2 quick highlights that feed into the strategic plan. One is that North Grenville has a very high proportion of residents with post-secondary education. So much higher than is the case for sort of the average Canadian city. So that's a neat stat, and I think when we established all of our advisory committees, we could see the plethora of talent, the number of people who wanted to be part of this community and contribute to the municipality or to a variety of volunteer organizations is truly impressive. The other thing we learned is that North Grenville has an unprecedented, in Canada, amount of public green space. So we are second to the capital of Iceland for the amount of public green space we have per capita. So smaller community, but 3 forests, right? So you've got Limerick, you have Ferguson Forest, and then we have the Kemptville Campus Agroforestry Center, which is right in the middle. So part of our community strategic plan is intended to do everything in our power to preserve natural assets, to pursue sustainable growth, and make sure that that growth connects people, not divides people, and that's not easy. And growth can create conflict, right? Because people may see certain things change in ways that are very disappointing or disorienting. But as Deb Wilson, Councillor Wilson tells me, and Jim McManaman used to say it too, this community's been changing for a lot of years, weathered a lot of storms, and I think what North Grenville is defined by is a kind of resilience and tenacity where it's the humans, it's the people who define the place, even as the place is changing. But the reality is with change comes opportunity, and I think that's what's most exciting about where North Grenville is now, is that we have a tremendous amount of opportunity. But it's not opportunity that can be wasted. It's not opportunity that we can take for granted because growth can change. We've had good growth, but it's not to say, did anyone see a pandemic coming? Maybe some did, but many of us probably didn't. So we really want to make sure that we ride the wave of growth in a way that allows us to have as many tools as possible so that we do preserve that quality of life. Maybe I'll just end, Will and Tina, with our municipal budget. And I'm not going to belabor it. There's lots of information on our website. I think what surprised me as a council member and mayor when I came in is the complexity of our municipal operations, right? We're a growing concern, there is no doubt. And we have a lot of different assets from Kempfield Campus, which is managed by a not-for-profit board, but is part of the municipal assets, if you will. And there are many other things we do as a municipality that people depend on each and every day. So we have about a $33 million budget, not insignificant, and we have a lot of infrastructure investments that I think you, Tina and Will ask me about that are really about planning well for the future. The other thing that's in the budget is Council was very enthusiastic when we first came in to pursue those partnerships and to pursue partnerships that weren't necessarily always in our jurisdiction. One of the one that comes to mind is victim services. We have Sonia Jodouin in this room, as well as her colleague Megan Cummings. They approached us, council, early on about how to better equip victim services to respond well to the needs of our community, particularly the most vulnerable. And we were able to work with victim services to create a fairly modest funding line that for the 30,000 we might have spent, allowed for a part-time person to be in this community most days of the week. Because what we were finding is the needs of Brockville and other centers, both rural and urban, were tying up victim services time, and we felt we owed it to our residents to make sure that when they picked up the phone, they got the service they need. And everything from food banks to victim services to a number of other areas where we recognize need. Kemptville District Hospital being another one, hospice services, seniors transit. These are all things that are part of the budget, and we hope to build on. So maybe I'll leave it there. As a good Newfoundlander, I can talk and talk and talk, and I know you have some questions.
We've been watching the clock. You're
We haven't. I haven't been.
Oh, really?
I have.
He's been watching the clock. I haven't been. I've been in.
I've done this before with her.
Oh, good, good, excellent.
Were you about to bring out the hook? I saw that you had back there.
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
I
You're right on time.
I watch my MC's eyes. I'm so dependent on these moderators for good questions. I want to make sure that they get the time they need. But if I have 2 more minutes, maybe the other thing I can say.
One.
Is that I think, I'm here tonight because during the pandemic, we saw the incredible amount of stress the business community was under, and the BI and the chamber. And we decided again as council, and Mr. Dyke was very much part of this discussion, how do we make an investment in our business community that really ensures that they hold steady during challenging times, but they come out stronger? And Tina and Will, I think it's really important to highlight that, I think for some years, as I understand it, the relationship between the municipality and our business networks perhaps wasn't as solid as it is today. And I think the pandemic really underscored for us how critical those relationships are. And, I think, that is the power of anything you do in your life. It's the integrity you bring and the commitment you bring to relationships, right? As a customer, as a client, as a parent. I'm a mother of 3 kids. My kids remind me all the time of my, general failings, and if I speak too loudly or I forget to pick up someone's sweater, they're all over me. So, relationship management, I think, is so critical, and I think we feel really blessed to have partnerships with you where you can really plan for success and plan for the future. And again, a relatively modest investment in the BIA and the chamber, as I think you'll see through some of the things we talk about tonight, will pay dividends. And that's where I think strategic investments that are wise, that are fiscally responsible, reap many rewards. And it's not for just the direct recipients, it's for the community as a whole. And I think that's what this community deserved. I'm a hockey mom of 2 kids. My son was in the playoffs. I was in, where was I last night? I was in Westport. He's a 10-year-old goalie, and they made it to the semifinals. And, it was an incredible ride. This is a C-level team, house league. These kids are not going to the NHL, but the passion of the parents and the respect that parents brought. So, I know hockey gets a bad rep, but actually my experience having a daughter and son in hockey has been very good. And what you see in this community is how much people want to give. They are so giving. We are so giving. You are so giving. And I think the value set that has underlined this council is how can we give back? How can we just make it better? How do we get out of your way? How do we say yes so that what you give of your time, your resources, your energy is fully leveraged? And I think if we didn't do that, quite frankly, we'd be letting you down. And that, I think, has been the ethos of this council. It's the ethos of our staff, our renewed leadership team, and it makes me very proud to be your mayor. And I'll leave it there.
Nice.
And I'll close my book.
Thank you, Mayor Peckford. That was awesome. Thanks for the great overview. But you haven't mentioned some things, so we have to talk about them. So, the correctional facility. That is one thing that you did not bring up, so can you give us the status of what's going on with that?
Yes, thank you, thank you. It's really been, I think, a totally unexpected issue. Never in a million years did I think I'd be talking about a correctional facility, but the reality is, as many of you know, that in 2020, if I have my years right, a correctional facility, a provincial correctional facility was announced for North Grenville on Kemptville, old Kemptville College farmside lands. Some people think it is actually going on the Kemptville campus lands. There's 626 acres that we own as a municipality, and I give my due to the former council. They got it right. This is an invaluable acquisition, and while some could argue that it was a lot of money up front, I would disagree. It was a $3.7 million investment effectively for 626 acres, and we have a gem of a property. So the good news is that the correctional facility is not going there. It is going on old farmside lands across the street. My kids go to school on the campus, so one of the things we heard initially was about safety. For kids on the campus, there's daycares on the campus, there's a number of service groups on the campus, there's a lot of people who use the campus recreationally. And really our job over the last couple of years is to get as much information as possible out of the ministry, the Solicitor General, that's the ministry that's overseeing the build, so that we could get as many questions answered by residents as possible. So we know it's 235 beds, we know that. We know, obviously, that it will house provincial offenders, which are 2 years less a day. And the other thing we have learned, and one of the things that we were very curious about in the beginning, is whether or not we could obtain any of the remaining farmside lands that we had a feeling the ministry wasn't going to use. So over the course of the last year, we've been actively negotiating alongside municipal staff and with Minister Steve Clark to see if we can, in fact, reacquire the lands that they are not likely to use. And the facility at this point, and I think this is important for people to know, is most likely going to the back of those lands, so very close to the 416. So there is going to be a very large buffer around the front of the facility, and there's also lands south of College that the ministry doesn't intend to use. So we have made a formal request through the ministry. I've met with the Solicitor General now a couple of times, again with senior staff and Mr. Dyke and Minister Clark, and we've been very, very clear that if nothing else, we want the remaining lands. These were lands that we always thought should have been part of the deal when we acquired the college, and it just wasn't the appetite of the province at the time, and financially I think they were insisting on a higher price. So as a consequence, those farmside lands remained in provincial jurisdiction, and I think because of the incredible agricultural heritage, of the Kemptville College, to not reacquire some of those lands that the correctional facility is not going to use would be rather tragic, and it has been one of our sole preoccupations. The other thing, very quickly, is on infrastructure. A lot of people, quite rightly, have been asking questions about infrastructure. I've been asking questions. Councillor John Barkley, who's here, who's our public works liaison, where we're knee-deep in the expansion of our wastewater treatment plant, have been asking questions about some of the infrastructure required to service the facility. Thankfully, we had a commitment fairly early on through some of the conversations Mr. Dyke was having with administrative staff that all of that is covered by the ministry as part of the build, but we expect to get that confirmation in writing very soon from the Solicitor General. She's already sort of written a letter of intent, and that's obviously very reassuring to us, because there's a lot of money at stake here in terms of how they build their infrastructure, especially if the ministry plans to use the wastewater treatment plant, which is what they expect to do. Finally, I don't want to avoid policing costs, so I'm going to talk about it. There has been some concern about policing costs. We've been doing a very close analysis of comparable communities with similarly sized facilities. We've certainly addressed it with the Solicitor General, with Minister Clark, with our own Police Services Board, and I think there'll be more to come on that. The facility at this point isn't expected to be operational before 2027. So there's a ways to go here on how things evolve.
Okay, thank you.
It's interesting, I caught that you described the wastewater treatment plant as being knee-deep in... That doesn't sound like it's going well, Nancy.
Very well, I assure you, very well, very well. Yeah.
We know that you're an active parent in the community. You're passionate about being outside. If anyone follows Mayor Nancy on Facebook, you see lots of, I'm like, it's cold, what are you doing?
She's outside, it's cold.
But can you tell us about what's happening about our local recreational facilities?
Oh, yeah, I can. Oh, my gosh. Okay. I was thinking I was going to talk about County Road 43 first, but no, I will talk about recreational facilities, which is great. Well, as you know, I think perhaps is best demonstrated by our phenomenal participation success. Don't think there's anyone in this room.
Yeah.
I mean, we truly did knock it out of the park, no pun intended, not to use another pun, Will. But, you know, coming out of COVID, I think there was some skepticism about whether or not we could be ready. I mean, really, again, it's a great example of a partnership because it was our Health, Wellness, and Fitness Committee, and it was actually Deputy Mayor, Jim McManaman, our former Deputy Mayor, who said, I want a Health and Fitness Committee. And, you know, he had gone through his own health kick before getting elected, and I was pretty into fitness, and he suggested the establishment of this committee. And I thought, yeah, sure, why not? And I knew I'd have a lot of work cut out for me, myself, and I thought, I want to be on that committee because it sounds like it will be fun. And it was through some of the conversations, the year of the pandemic, that the notion of participating in the Participation Challenge came up, but of course with the pandemic everything got shut down. So once again, this time last year it was brought to our attention. And I talk about participation because I think the incredible momentum that this community generated in a matter of months, literally, sometimes weeks, the number of gyms and community organizations and teachers and daycares, you might recall the Montessori put on a whole dance party. They logged, I mean, tens of thousands of minutes. It was incredible, and they weren't the only one. Many of the daycares did. Really showed what an attachment and a commitment people have to parks and recreation in this community. And I think council's been really cognizant of making sure that people have access to neighborhood parks. They have access to good hamlet recreational facilities where people live in hamlets, where most of our population lives, incidentally, and that we also invest in Riverside Park, which is our major, you know, what I tend to call our sort of central park, if you will. And so we, you know, through the participation dollars that we won the grand prize. And incidentally, just because I think it really highlights the participatory nature of North Grenville, we spoke with the CEO of Participation, and what he said is, you didn't actually win because of the number of minutes logged. If you were on the app, you might have seen that North Grenville was sort of, you know, in fact, I don't think we moved from the number one position for about 3 weeks. But when we talked to him, he said it wasn't just the minutes you were logging, which were calculated per capita. It was the buy-in you had from community living, from seniors groups, from faith communities. I mean, all across the board. That's what they were looking for, and that's why we won the 100,000. So with that in mind, we made a decision to renew some very aging infrastructure in 4 of our rural hamlets, and I think that's a good news story, and we've been having great conversations with our hamlets about where to put some of those dollars. We also, you know, buoyed by that success, did something for the second time, not this year, but in the last couple of years, which is we flooded the Kemptville Creek. And I know that it garnered a lot of attention, and there's a lot of excitement, and it was a very family-friendly facility. And a big shout-out, of course, to Herb Cloutier and his wife, Deb, who were huge catalysts. And then this year, our municipal staff got on board, and Herb and our Parks and Rec staff were talking, and Parks and Rec staff said, I think we can make our own Zamboni to flood it, and wouldn't that be amazing, and save a whole bunch of volunteers some time, and they extended the creek quite significantly. So we did that, but the other big investment is Riverside Park. And what's notable about Riverside Park is it is one of those things that we can finance through growth. So many of you may understand or know that development charges are part of the landscape of this community. If you're a developer, and I know there's a couple here, you know that you pay a development charge for every commercial and property or home that you build. But development charges are intended to give municipalities capacity to invest in quality of life, infrastructure, as well as sort of underground infrastructure, water and sewer, those sorts of things, roads, for the benefit of all, and not just new residents, but old. So over $1 million of the Riverside Park overhaul, if you will, is financed through development charges. It's not through the tax base. And just this week, we learned that there's another $500,000 that we attracted through a grant. We also have some private sector sponsors who learned about our participation success, and they wanted to make some additional investments. So, you know, it's a great news story all around, and it's it's a testimony to, again, the community that we were able to, I think, make our mark last year and really capitalize on some of that momentum.
That's awesome. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
Good job to the community.
Yeah, really.
So something else on our radar,
Yes.
I think a thorn in the side for growth, I think a
Yeah.
little bit, is the County Road 43.
Yes.
The expansion. So we have been waiting a long time,
Yeah.
and I don't see shovels in the ground.
Yeah, I love this question. I'm so glad for this question.
So
Yeah, no, it's really.
tell us more.
Yes.
How do you really feel about this question?
Yes. It's really important that I maintain my professionalism, because there has been some frustration. The reality is when I got elected, again, what's interesting is, I'd be out in the furthest reaches of Bishop's Mills, I swear to God, on some farm, and you'd ask somebody, what is your biggest concern in North Grenville? And they would say County Road 43. And I'd be like, oh my God, like, you're all the way to here. Of course I know it's well used, but I was struck by how universally shared the concern was. And of course, we know how bad the road was. Unfortunately, someone was killed on that road, right, crossing it at night in poor lighting, et cetera. So we knew, and I knew coming in, that we certainly have to make it a priority. The good news is the funding was secured fairly quickly. So in 2020, we made an announcement for close to $10 million of federal and provincial money. Kudos to Minister Clark. He knew that was, it was my priority. It was definitely his priority. And we worked well with Minister McNaughton, who was the infrastructure minister at the time, and we secured the money. And we did a co-application. Actually, what Minister Clark said to us is, there's a $5 million cap on this fund, but I'm going to encourage North Grenville to apply too. So that way you can double the amount of money that you can get for this project. So that was amazing. So that moved fairly quickly through the system, arguably, not as quickly as we might have hoped, but by 2020 the funding was in place. But in the meantime, the county was advancing its own engineering plans, and they had to take a second look at the bridge. And as I may or may not have fully articulated this time last year, because I don't think we were quite there yet, they realized that because County Road 43 is like 14 years in waiting now, right? That some of the plans are a decade old. So when they looked at the bridge was deemed to have 3 to 5 years of remaining life, right? So all of a sudden, what was a $27 million County Road 43 expansion was now a $37 million County Road and Bridge expansion. So the engineering for the bridge took the priority, and some of the other pieces that were outstanding, like land acquisition, there's up to, Gary, I'm going to get it wrong, 28 parcels of land, something to that effect, that the county has to secure. It's a county project, so that we can actually double the roadway. But equally important, by doubling the bridge, there's some property implications, and the last year and a half have been spent getting the project ready. So what that means is that the counties has now retained a project manager, Macintosh Perry. This is the largest capital project for the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville in its history. It's a big project. So obviously it became very evident that a project manager was required. There's going to be a robust communication strategy, Tina, because we know this is major commercial quarter. Every resident in North Grenville depends on this quarter as well. So we really need to do our homework in terms of disruptions. I want to reassure you that the bridge plan is to build a new bridge and to not close the old bridge until that new bridge is built, and then demolish the old bridge. So the idea, of course, is to minimize disruptions on this road. It's not tenable to close even sections of the road for any long period. So there's a lot of time and skill going into anticipating the different stages, but the bridge work, a little bit is starting now around hydro poles, et cetera, but in earnest, we're gonna say it's gonna start late fall, early spring. If things go well, they could be building some pieces through the winter, we'll see.
It's a good thing that you pushed that along when you did, because if it took 3 years to find out that we had 3 years lifespan,
Yeah, it was
Could have been a problem.
just-in-time
Anyway,
project, let's say
yeah.
that, a just-in-time project,
You-
yeah.
we've heard council refer to County Road 43 as a boulevard.
Yes, thank you.
What is that?
Oh my God, I think Councillor Sullivan would kill me and Councillor Strachan if I didn't say this. So, thank you. Yes, the idea with the project, and we heard a lot also on the campaign trail and subsequently about roundabouts, right? And there are, I think, four roundabouts now projected for this section of road, basically between the bridge and County Road 44, right? Do I have that right? Yeah. So, not everybody loves roundabouts, but and County Council doesn't necessarily love them either. And in fact, there's been some very lively discussion at County Council about the size of the investment. But the engineers have been unequivocal, given the density, both particularly commercial, on this stretch of road. Roundabouts is the only way to control traffic flow, right? You can't. Traffic lights aren't going to do it in such a short period. They actually create more danger. They're much less safe. I know it's hard to believe, and I didn't believe it either, but I've now seen all the science, and my kids use roundabouts in other communities. You can't construct roundabouts that are truly safe for pedestrians, right? That have intersection controls in the roundabouts. So the reality is the boulevard concept is one where we will have trees, we will have lighting, we will have multi-use pathways on both sides, which is incredibly important for safety. And the roundabouts will help slow people down. And we know what's happening on County Road 43 is it's a bit of a, yes, sometimes you get backed up, but when you're not, you can go at a fairly good clip. The speed limit will be reduced on County Road 43 by, I think, 20 kilometers. I think it'll be a 60-kilometer road. So it will truly be a road that facilitates, right, access to businesses, that gives people who are living on one side of the 43 or the other the opportunity to cross safely into Ferguson Forest or over to Brood Awakenings. So we've called it informally North Grenville's Boulevard, and it's very much our expectation that it will kind of meet that aesthetic standard, if you will, and it's not intended to be a highway. The last thing North Grenville needs is a highway, a full-on 4-lane highway running through our community. We really need, just the opposite.
I think that was a concern
Yes.
for people, particularly businesses along the 43.
Yes.
That
Yes.
it was just going to be one 80-kilometer highway, so it's really nice to see that development happen the way it's looking to.
Yeah, and there's some good visuals. Actually, there's a 3D video that might include that 5th roundabout that ended up not proceeding, but it's a great visual of what it will kind of feel and look like. So I encourage you to go to our website. We have a dedicated County Road 43 page, but there's going to be lots of notice, particularly on the road expansion, so no one will be surprised. And in some ways, the timing worked out, Tina, because if everything goes well, we may be hosting 75,000 people for the International Plowing Match later this fall, and to have had, even any unusual activity on County Road 43 might have been a little challenging. So perhaps the timing's worked out.
You've touched on infrastructure and talked about different elements of it, but I know the proposed correction facility is going to have a big impact on infrastructure. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, well, I think, in our analysis, the wastewater treatment plant is where it is likely to have the most. There are some road works, that, and sort of the intersection control at Concession and Prescott may need some improvement. But for the most part, we think the infrastructure impact is on the wastewater treatment plant. But the other opportunity, Will, that and I should say, but those impacts are being fully financed. To the degree that it's being articulated to us now, and I have to have some confidence in the government of Ontario, I have to accept at a certain point that they mean business. And you know, Gary Dyke and his team, Amy Martin, Director Dunlop, have had a lot of conversations with senior management ADMs about their plans to underwrite the infrastructure that is required. And at this point, that seems crystal clear to us, right? So I don't think there will be a financial burden to that infrastructure, but it, you know, does require a little bit of adjustment, for example, to our wastewater treatment plant in terms of making sure that their wastewater flows into the plant and can be accommodated. But the wastewater treatment plant that we're expanding, which has nothing to do with the correctional facility, by the way, it was on the books when we were elected, and I think it might have been one of the first conversations that Director Dunlop had with us was, heads up, we've got a problem. Like, we're running out of capacity. And one of the more difficult conversations in the community, I think in year one, and then it was, we had to get all the developers together and some of the major home builders and say, we're so sorry, we're running out of capacity. And in a high growth community, that wasn't a good news story. That was a distressing story. So once Mr. Dyke had come on board and he got Karen's full briefing on what, you know, was required, we've actually been moving for now 2 years on engineering and design plans to accommodate a phased expansion. And I know some people think the correctional facility was the catalyst for an expansion, and that's the furthest thing from the truth. We were running out of capacity, and in fact, we had to create a whole bylaw that basically meted out remaining capacity, that said, okay, you can only build so many houses, right, this year, or, oh, you want that commercial building, well, we need to take a hard look at how many washrooms, how much water you're going to use. We had car wash businesses in this community that were desperate to move ahead, and unless they were recycling their water, it's a no-go. They just consume too much water. So, you know, so the correctional facility will tie into an expanding plant, and they will pay their way. And that's the full, you know, that's the full expectation and commitment at this stage.
Okay.
Okay. So you've touched on key initiatives like the community strategic plan, the budget, investing in our Riverside Park and the hamlets, and other kinds of infrastructure. So with so much going on,
yes,
we want to change the tone a little bit.
Please do.
Okay. We had a couple other questions. Okay. Okay.
Good. I'm all good.
All right.
We're wondering what's been one of your biggest surprises as mayor of North Grenville.
Yeah.
What's happened that went, ooh?
Well, you know, obviously, clearly the pandemic, no doubt, was probably our biggest surprise, but that would be true for any mayor, council, premier, MLA, right, business owner, parent, you know, or a senior. I know, you know, we were keeping a very close eye on Norma as a member of our St. James Anglican Church community, and the isolation was just unbelievable. And I think, you know, particularly for seniors and small children, it was devastating. And the mental health impacts and the physical impacts, and sometimes the lack of access to medical care because everything was being done virtually, that was a tough pill to swallow. And it was a 2-year pill to swallow. And, you know, there was a lot of disruptions, openings, lockdowns, shutdowns. You know, around this time last year, I don't know if you remember, but we had Randy Hillier on his way to North Grenville to stage a fairly boisterous protest against some of the mandates. And, you know, that was really hard to watch because we knew that there were some businesses suffering and that they were fighting for their lives, right? And sometimes it feels compelling, right, to join, you know, a side, if you will, when it comes to a public health matter, that in the end may have done them no good, right? So, you know, the pandemic, obviously, I was thinking you'd ask me this question, and I wasn't even thinking about how to answer it.
It was meant to be fun.
Yes, yes. I can't say that. I have to say, you're going to have to ask me the fun question separately.
That's me.
Okay, you do the fun one. So, you know, obviously, the pandemic, I think, yeah, is what it is, and hopefully we're all coming out of it now. But, you know, I'm very proud of the collaboration between our local physicians. We had Dr. Suzanne Rutherford reaching out to the municipality and saying, listen, we need an assessment center here. Like, forget going to Brockville, right? And And I have these conversations a lot at the United Counties of Leeds and Granville. We're 10 municipalities. And there is more than one urban center, thank you very much, right? And there's a bit of a default, and I don't love it, and nobody in this community benefits from it. And I think that's why, as much as County Road 43 feels like a huge investment for the counties, it is a well-deserved investment, and it is long overdue, and it needs to happen. So, I think going back to the pandemic, the collaboration that we absolutely had to pursue to make certain things happen was a pleasant surprise. I see Kelvin and Aaron in this room from the Salvation Army, and again on the food banks. Did anyone see that the demand on the food banks was going to double or triple in 10 weeks? No, right? So again, we really had to step up, and the Salvation Army as supported by the Knights and House of Lazarus have done absolute yeoman's work, and fueled largely by volunteers at the Salvation Army, and with some funds, thankfully, from the United Counties through the province, have been able to invest in some infrastructure that has made a world of difference. I would say, though, if I can answer before getting to the fun question, I think the other thing that was a kind of unrelated surprise from the pandemic is everyone thought the economy was going to tank. And what we ended up seeing in North Grenville was housing prices that are now on average $100,000 higher than Ottawa. Like, who would have thought, right? And the surprise, I think, for certain property owners, especially ones that were using their properties as rentals, is that their housing prices skyrocketed to the point where we saw a rental market evaporate, like literally evaporate. I would get calls weekly during the pandemic, and people, we had already established this Mayor's Affordable Housing Task Force, like well before any pandemic, and we were already, getting our heads around what do we do, but it was exacerbated by the pandemic to an extreme, and we lost so many families that were renting, or seniors that were renting, and literally they went to Ottawa, where now actually in some cases rent is cheaper, or they went to Brockville, where there's been a lot of subsidized housing. So the loss of some of our most vulnerable residents because they were dislocated out of the community, I think is something that we need to tackle, and we can talk about housing later. So.
Well, I think we'll forget the fun question because you went right into the next one.
Okay.
So, you stole my line.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
What was it?
It was about the CMHC says housing prices are 100. That's my line.
I'm so sorry. Oh, Tina, we really should have reviewed notes more beforehand, clearly. Yes, they are much higher. They are. What can I say?
So Will has a question for you then.
I don't know, where are we? No.
Go ahead, a couple pages.
I'm kidding. So you just mentioned affordable housing and talked about the need, and we know that you care about this. It's been obvious by creating a task force. What's an update? Where are we at?
Yep. Well, I think what the Mayor's Task Force on Affordable Housing allowed us to do was to start planning, and again, in that pre-pandemic environment. So the good news is we were already in the process of looking at our zoning and our bylaws, and the province actually was also creating the conditions for municipalities to expedite things like secondary suites, so like granny suites, like basement apartments, like other rental units within the same primary dwelling, if you will. So we were, that was flagged for us, and under the able leadership of Carl Cannon and Colleen Linus, who led that housing task force, they had set out, like 15, 17 sort of immediate priorities. So we were already doing some of the homework at that time to sort of eliminate some of the red tape, make it easier for people in this community to either retrofit a home for a secondary suite, or to make it, to diminish the burden on developers to build secondary suites. So now we don't charge development charges for a secondary suite unit. So if you you wanted to buy a new home and you're thinking about an aging parent, or maybe you're thinking about your 22-year-old who is yet to move out, then you can actually, we're encouraging builders, please build the secondary suite, right? Because we can't guarantee that they're going to find an affordable rental accommodation, or that they can actually purchase a home, right, for the next 10 years. We don't know. So that's huge. And I ended up chairing, actually, the United Counties first task force in its history. We were in the course of a heavy discussion about housing, and Mayor Todd, who's the Mayor of Prescott, said, I think we should have a task force. And I was like, absolutely, because he said, you guys had one in North Grenville. And so Mayor Todd and I and a couple of others worked to pursue a motion. And staff said, we've never had a task force at the counties before, which is wild. So we put together this task force, and it too has a number of recommendations. But through that process, we were able to also get the United Counties to think more strategically about some of the housing opportunities here. And I think, as some of you know, we recently decided to lease the courthouse, which was an aging building with, a tremendous history and some sentimental value, but not very functional anymore. We decided as a council to lease that building to the United Counties to build 11 affordable housing units. It's not a lot, but it's 11 units, we would have lost and some through the pandemic. We also have a number of other sort of private housing developments. Some may see the activity behind Giant Tiger, Kevlar. I think Kevin, you're here. Do I see Kevin in the room? From Kevlar, they're building, I think, 68 rental units, and they agreed to an affordability provision as part of the new North Grenville policy for a number of those units. So, that's huge, because what I fear is that we don't want to lose good people, and we certainly don't want to lose seniors who've raised their families in this community and look around and have nowhere to go. And not all of them, such as Norma, are ready for long-term care or retirement living. They want to stay in their community, and if we can provide other options, I think it's the least we can do, really. So that's good news. And finally, maybe I'll say Habitat for Humanity had been identified in our task force as being an interesting partner. They've a wonderful reputation across the country, and they had built a home that Ashley, in our front row here, lives in Oxford Mills. And we knew about Ashley's experience, actually, and I think you came and spoke at our task force, did you not? Yeah, so Ashley really got us to understand sort of the value of the Habitat model in terms of creating home affordability. Habitat for Humanity owners own their home. It's the pathway to ownership that Habitat facilitates. So they take care of the down payment. They support a resident who maybe loses their employment temporarily. They don't repossess the home. They offer stability for new homeowners that may otherwise have trouble entering the market. So through some quick work on the part of council and staff, we actually severed a small piece of property, as I think most of you might know, on the periphery of the campus, and they're building 15 three-bedroom townhomes. It's extraordinary. So we'll have 15 families or older, residents in our community that can potentially pursue that option, and we're very excited.
That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to ask the fun question.
Yeah, please. Yes.
Because I'm all about the fun.
Yes.
I love to have fun.
Yes, good.
So, okay, what has been the most fun
Yes.
for you
Yes.
in your time as mayor?
Well, I think the glory of participation was very sweet. It was, it was just so good because it was so inclusive. And, we had all been pent up for so long. And, my kids now are 10, 12, and 14. And, to see them on screens day after day, like in my mind was just devastating. And to see so many people not able to leave their homes. And I don't think participation was a panacea in our community, but it was an invitation, right? To come out, to connect. And we had on the participation app, you could create groups, right? So people created within their neighborhoods little cohorts, and they were competing against each other, and they were, rivaling in a really fun way. And I think we had all missed that. And there's been such a pall in the community with COVID and in the country, and to just invite people to get active, was, I think, it was just so fulfilling, and it meant I was dragging my kids out of the house, and I did some really early morning kayaks with a good friend, Jen, who I think is watching online, and we just got to push ourselves. And then, victory. Like, how do you not, rejoice and revel in the victory? And, the success that was derived and the joy that so many experienced, and that the members of our Health, Fitness, and Wellness Committee experienced themselves was wonderful, because it was a collective project. So
Nice.
that's been fun. I should also say well, it's not fun. I truly enjoy the interaction with residents. Like, I love it. And, you know, I have a strong Facebook presence, and in some ways it's easier to reach me by Facebook Messenger. And I enjoy unpacking an issue. And, you know, sometimes people are coming with problems that we truly can't solve, and maybe they've tried to solve them before, and, you know, they're kind of coming back for a third kick at the can, if you will. But often I hear from people who just have good ideas. And they just have good ideas, or, you know, they've noticed something, like, you know, that doesn't look quite right. And more often than not, and senior staff are very patient with me, and Karen Dunlop in particular, I think, hears a lot. And, you know, she'll check something out or send one of her staff, and the resident was right. Like, you know, something just didn't go quite right, and we can fix it. And I know that doesn't sound like a lot of fun, but it's very fulfilling, right? To be able to be that conduit for the community, and we all do that as council colleagues through our liaison roles. And I think that kind of interaction with the community can never be, like, overvalued. And staff do it too. Lots of issues we never hear about because they're problem solving. But the interactions, I think, you know, as someone who's raising my kids here, and you know, someone who's fairly visible, I'm at the hockey rink, I'm in the grocery store. Sometimes people apologize. They're like, oh, no, like, I don't mean to. And actually, I welcome it. It's what I said during the campaign. And some people said, you're going to be too busy as a mom. You know, how are you going to do it all? And actually, what I said to them is, I want to be visible. I want to be where you are, because then you can tell me stuff. Then we can have real conversations. And that has been fun. So,
Another fun thing is tourism, because it's fun to be a tourist in your own community,
Yes.
right? So talk to us a little bit about the tourism plan.
yes, well, I didn't acknowledge, and she's here, Heather. Oh, there you are. Heather is our not newly minted, but in the last year is our new tourism coordinator. And her role really came from the development of a tourism strategy that we did right in the middle of the pandemic. So, you know, and again, I think people thought, oh my God, is anyone ever going to leave their homes again? But we dug down on this strategy, and what the consultants said to us at the time is there's so much untapped potential, right? And, you know, to be living in North Grenville and have people, like hundreds, if not thousands, take County Road 43 to get to Merrickville. That's something to consider, right? So we know we're right on the boundary with 1 million people. We're the largest community between Brockville and the city of Ottawa. We've got wonderful destination experiences, from a dog park to now disc golf to the Kemptville Creek, to our forests. How could we not do everything in our power to really make good on that, and to really make tourism part of our economy for our local businesses? And, you know what, my father is here, and, you know, I think we saw Newfoundland in the 80s and 90s knock itself out to define itself as a compelling, you know, world-class destination, which is very expensive to get to, very time-consuming, right? Ferries that, you know, often are delayed or can't run because of the weather. And Newfoundland, like, just did a marvelous job at positioning itself as this island in the middle of the North Atlantic that was expensive and difficult to reach. But they have a beautiful tourism economy now. So I'm not saying North Grenville should be what Newfoundland is, obviously not, but we are so beautifully positioned with natural assets, right? With accessibility, right, to major urban centers, with the history of the Kemptville campus, right, and the Kemptville College. And, you know, we saw my local markets during the pandemic, right, do these night markets, and hundreds of people, right, from 100 kilometers around us would come out for these night markets just to be outside, to discover something new. Many of them were familiar with Kemptville College and felt some nostalgia around that. Also during the pandemic, working in partnership with our BIA, we piloted the downtown promenades, and those are gonna, you know, I think be a thing of both the present and the future. We did a first summer promenade, and at the time, Deb Wilson was chair of the BIA, and, you know, there were public health concerns, there were weather concerns, there were will people come concerns, and literally the clouds parted. I remember we had these massive thunderstorms overnight. They were like torrential, and we thought we'd have to cancel the event. And we'd lined up all these vendors that were local and gotten Matt Gilmer and his team, you know, had bubble machines, and we had music, and we thought, oh my God, this is all for naught. And literally the skies parted at 10 a.m. and 1,000 people showed up. And what we were freaking out about then was COVID. Let's not have anyone get COVID. But we had good COVID protocols. But that was our first promenade. So it really shows that I think if you build it, truly people will come. So, you know, the tourism strategy is really about Heather's very good work, building relationships, creating capacity, understanding opportunity, leveraging and highlighting businesses that help to facilitate that destination experience where people are coming for a day or they're coming for a weekend. And, you know, there's just so much more to do. And I guess if you want to talk about International Plowing Match, that's probably the time. Okay.
That's kind of
Whenever you're ready.
that's my next
Whenever you're ready.
question.
Okay. I'll be very patient.
We were going to actually ask you about upcoming events in the community.
I know. Did I
Like
list
what's
them all?
happening?
I brought a list because there's
Yeah.
so many. Oh yes, okay. Okay, no, I have a list here because I can't keep track of them. I'll be at all of them, but I can't keep track of them. So Maple Fest, right, was another. So when Kemptville College closed, so did this incredible agroforestry center, right? So we have a sugar bush, and I'd meet other families because my kids were quite young then, and we'd all be looking for sugar bushes like an hour away, and all of a sudden I got a tour of the agroforestry center in 2018, and I was like, oh my God, there's something right here, right now. So when I was chair of the Kemptville Campus Board as part of the interim board, we worked with Frank Herkins, who was who's very passionate, a local maple syrup producer. He offered to basically continue to tap the trees, to maintain a certain amount of the property in partnership with the campus, and through the jigs and the reels, we now have our second Maple Fest, and we will be part of one of, I don't know, like 40 or 50 communities across Ontario that are celebrating all things maple. So, like, hugely successful. And we ran tours last fall, and Karen Bedard from Kemptville Live has been wonderful at bringing her volunteers in, and we really just reintroduce people to this incredible forest. And it's a certified forest. The campus had it certified so that there's sustainability practices as part of not just the sugar bush, but this 18 acres of forest that's right in the heart of downtown Kemptville. So there's Maple Fest. We have the first ever Busker Fest, which is coming, and Ashley and some others are on the organizing committee for that. I think Deb, Councillor Wilson's quite involved. So that's been a long time coming, a major initiative of the BIA on May 21st. Kempfield Pride is actually coming back to Kemptville. They did one in, I guess, 19. For those of you who aren't familiar with Kempfield Pride, the event here is incredibly family friendly. There's bubbles, there's music, there's lots of sponsors. So they're coming back with a 2-day event. Of course, Kemptville Live. I have already said to Karen, please reserve my ticket because I haven't bought it yet. And we're very excited about the lineup for Kemptville Live. So, you know, obviously, I think a lot of pent-up demand in this community for Kemptville Live. Canada Day, of course, as well. Another evolution in terms of how Canada Day was managed here is it was an event that staff basically ran on behalf of the community, and through the good work of the Kemptville District Community Association in partnership with Bishops, Burritts, and Oxford Mills, the KDCA came to the municipality and said, will you let us run it? We'll spend what you spent, we won't spend more, and in fact we can probably do more with what you would have spent anyway. And the first Canada Day that they managed was extraordinary. It was amazing, so well done. Oh, Wendy's here. See, I can't see with my glasses. Hi, Wendy. So Wendy's been very much at the helm of that effort, along with Councillor Wilson and others. So we expect, I think, a fully live Canada Day if all goes well. And of course, we have the International Plowing Match. So Councillor O'Sullivan, who's here, kindly stepped up to co-chair with Kathy Shepherd, our volunteer recruitment committee, and I don't think there's a person in this room who hasn't been tapped by one of those two fabulous ladies to volunteer for the IPM. So, you know, once again, there's, I think, 50 steering committees. It's a tremendous effort. Part of it will be held on Kemptville campus, and part of it is being held on some private farmlands because it's such an elaborate event over 4 days that it takes a lot of moving parts. But we're very excited about it because, once again, you know, with the loss of Kemptville College, a lot of people thought all things agriculture sort of disappear, right, from the history and future of North Grenville, and that nothing further is the truth in terms of what we want. So, you know, when the IPM approached us, we thought, what a tremendous way to reintroduce Eastern Ontario and Ontario to what we're doing, you know, from a community building and agricultural perspective, not obviously just as a municipality, but as, you know, private farmers and food producers. The other thing that's coming out of IPM is a significant educational component for our kids, which is really amazing to, you know, introduce them to the value of food production and food security. And when we're having some consultations later in April about those farm side surplus lands that we think we expect to have access to. And our goal with those lands is to have community-driven agricultural initiatives on those lands, so that they truly can be, you know, things that the community can use, you know, whether it's community gardens or vertical greenhouses or, you know, demonstration elements for kids to really learn about what it takes to get food on the table. So it's a big piece. The other part of having the IPM here is we worked at Kemptville campus with our 4 school boards to bring back, it's an incredible story, to actually bring back some of the agricultural apprenticeships that got lost. So when Kemptville College closed, much of it went away, and the Upper Canada District School Board and the French Public Board agreed and worked with us and the ministry to offer some pre-apprenticeship programs. And those programs are going to grow in the coming year, and Minister Clark should really make that announcement. He will make that announcement, so I won't say too much, but the capacity for us to reintroduce ag apprenticeships in this community is extraordinary. And Tracy McDonald, looking right at you, you know the skill shortage, right? And there are so many companies that are desperate to have their people learn while on the job, access critical apprenticeships, and we're very optimistic that this can be part of Kemptville campus's future. So it's kind of, it's not directly related to IPM, but it's very much part of what happens in the ag sector.
Excellent.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now's the time for questions. We're going to get some questions from the audience. We're going to get some questions online. Tina's in charge of the audience. I got to try to log into this.
Okay.
We'll see.
You can do it.
We'll see how it goes.
Does anybody have any questions? Don't all speak at once. Kathy, you must have a question. Oh, okay. I'm going. Feel like Vanna White or something.
Kathy's just going to ask for volunteers.
That's more or less true.
They've asked me to hold the mic for COVID reasons.
I might not need it. Thank you very much, Your Worship. Really, really impressive chat tonight. Thank you so much. My question is around Highway 43 and the bridge. So the bridge that they're constructing, is it going to be a 4-lane bridge?
Yes.
And so there's probably some type, and I guess we can go online and look, some type of a curvature in the road to accommodate that. Are you putting it on, is it going on the south side of the current bridge?
I'm so glad I have senior staff in the room. Karen, can you just repeat for me where the expansion for the bridge is going? On the south side. And yes, it is a 4-lane bridge. So perhaps what I should have said is they're building the bridge, a new bridge, 2-lane, demolishing the old bridge, and then building the other 2 lanes. So it will be a fully functional 4-lane bridge.
And I have a second second comment around, or question to your worship, but it's around the college. I sit on the campus
Yes.
board
Yes, you do.
for the college, and it really is a gem in the middle of Kemptville. That is for sure. So my question is more around the MOU. I think it would be nice if you could just maybe let the audience know how much work the council has done before the board was formed on the master plan, I guess you should say, rather than the MOU.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dermot. And Dermot O'Farrell is one of the individuals in our community that stepped up to sit on what is now a fully independent board. And we're very grateful to him, both Dermot, alongside other members, as well as Karen, Cooper, right? Yes. Cooper, thank you. Karen Cooper, who I speak to regularly, so I should remember her last name. Karen Cooper, who is chairing the board. So council's job prior to establishing a sort of very robust governance framework, and again, thanks to Mr. Dyke, when he came in, we said, Gary, like, we need this thing to fly. One of the things we need your support on is facilitating this transition to an arm's length board, because myself and Deputy Mayor was sitting on the board alongside one of the school board reps, the French Public Board that actually owns land on the campus. And we knew we needed to evolve the governance for that board. But prior to doing that, the municipality and campus had received a RED grant, a Rural Economic Development Grant, and that grant was to do a master planning exercise for the campus. So it was a visioning exercise, and we heard from a myriad of individuals in the community, beyond the community, on the many different roles that the campus could fulfill. We brought in like just this dynamite external sort of, they were kind of engineers, designers, kind of community builder folks. They were Montreal, Southwestern Ontario. They kind of straddled Ontario, Quebec, and they led the consultation. So as we were transitioning out, the new board, it was sort of receiving sort of this master plan, which includes education, health, wellness, economic development, among other things. So there's a good, there's a good blueprint, if you will, for what will happen at the campus over time. And certainly that apprenticeship piece I was speaking about is part of that. What we need for the campus to thrive is a certain amount of revenue generation, and we need a certain amount of community engagement, because it's a community asset, but it's a community asset that's paying its own way as well. So there's a balance there, and that's right, I think, where Dermot and his colleagues on the board are, is reconciling both those mandates.
Go ahead, Tina. Just a reminder, anyone on the Zoom call, if you're out in Zoom or Facebook land, please ask your questions online. We'll take them here electronically and pass them to the mayor.
And Your Honor, we have a question from Michelle.
You've spoken about the vision for the community and how it reflects the people who live here. What projects are you most excited for that will have the largest impact in bringing this vision to life?
That's a very good question. I appreciate that question. My mic feels so much louder now. Okay, I'm going to go with that. I think the projects or initiatives, maybe I should say, that I'm most excited about are the ones that connect the community, right, within and to itself. Tourism is really exciting, and I think it's critical to the evolution of North Grenville's economy, and I think it's fun, and we can make strategic investments that really enable that. But I think the partnerships we have with our community associations really enliven, right, what North Grenville is and how people experience the community. So, things like Canada Day, things like not just at Riverside Park, but in Oxford Mills, at Maplewood Park, right? The things that allow people to come together and gather in new and different ways I think are what's most meaningful. You know, when I was here with very young children, I was constantly leaving the community to do certain things, right? Something as basic as a splash pad, which I know not everyone fully understands or values, but it's not about it. It's not about, you know, it's this relatively modest element, right? So it's going to be in Riverside Park. So Riverside Park is going to go from a 4-season park to a 12-season park because we're going to put a splash pad in. And you know how much hotter our summers are getting, right? And there's a lot of families here with young children. I sort of feel like there was a baby boom during the pandemic because during the Christmas parade, there were all of these young kids. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of families. And with little kids, like not kids my age anymore, but kids under the age of 8. I mean, they were everywhere. And you're like, oh my God, okay, right? So we know there are families here, but you know, these amenities like a splash pad, an outdoor skating rink that will be refrigerated, 4-season change rooms and washrooms will allow people to gather all year round, not for organized sports, because not everybody's going to do hockey, right, or is going to do boxing or martial arts or dance in the community. A lot of families just want to hang out. So we also, for Riverside Park, as I understand it, recently got some funding for a multi-use pathway around Riverside, which will be its own walking path. And a lot of seniors during participation said we'd love to have more walking paths in the community that allow us to casually socialize, et cetera, but not necessarily do like a huge, you know, 5K circuit. So this multi-use pathway will be another feature. So, you know, the things that I think are really special to me are the things that bring people together. And, you know, I think Riverside is a part of that. It's not the only thing. We're also doing our best to make sure that, you know, there are neighborhood parks so that, you know, again, passive and active green space is accessible to people no matter where they live. And I would say the other thing really is County Road 43 because it's such a bottleneck right now. And I see kids, I see, you know, workers at Tim Hortons, unfortunately, sometimes have no choice but to walk parts of County Road 43, and it's a nightmare. And we don't have a transit system in the community that's accessible to youth. We do have an accessible transit system that is available to seniors 65 year and older and to those persons with disabilities. But one of the big projects this year is to look at how we can potentially grow our transit to better serve youth and other vulnerable populations. But, you know, regardless of that, County Road 43 absolutely must be transformed. And it's gonna, you know, as much as the project is well planned, we know there's gonna be bumps on the road. But once we get past it, it's gonna be a new day, I think, for our community.
I have some questions from the online,
Beautiful,
from Zoom.
excellent.
And I'm going to combine 2 of them in one because they're related
Okay,
to running, not participation, but when will you be running for county warden? And will the mayor be running for re-election in the fall?
Oh.
Related, but different.
really, indeed,
Yeah.
indeed. Well, thank you for the question. I did say recently, but you're right, I probably haven't said it enough. So I wrote a column for the North Grenville Times on International Women's Day, and in that column I did say that it was my intention to run again. It would give me great pleasure to serve the community in a second mandate. Thank you. And I have a feeling most of my council colleagues are running too. So I think many of us feel like we're just getting started, right? And even though we did lots of work during the pandemic, we didn't have the benefit of a lot of the face-to-face. So certainly it's, I think, you know, in some ways it feels like we're just getting started, and in some ways it feels like we need that time to finish some of what we're just now sort of delving deep into. But I've always said, I mean, if I have the blessing of the community to be a mayor for the next term, I am a 2-term mayor. So that's what I don't want to stay forever because I do believe that it's good to have change. But it would be my honor to serve again. And then in terms of warden, such a good question. David Gordon served as warden during his tenure as mayor in this community, and It is Grenville's turn, so the warden position, which is sort of like the head of council for county council, does rotate between Leeds and Grenville, and our turn is in the fall. So I will definitely be seriously considering that opportunity, and I don't think it would in any way take away from what I do on behalf of this community, but allow me to better offer some leadership to that body. So, of course, once again, at the pleasure of county colleagues, so we'll see. Thanks for the
Great.
question.
I want to apologize because this isn't a question.
Okay.
It's a blatant attempt at promotion.
She passed it by me first.
I did. One of the things that you failed to mention, Mayor Nancy,
Yes.
in the upcoming events
Farmers
is-
market, farmers market.
Thank you. The grand opening of the Kemptville Farmers Market. As some of you may know, I was on the Kemptville Farmers Market Board, and now I'm on the events committee. And Mayor Nancy should know when it is because she's opening
Faux
it.
pas. Faux pas.
May the 15th is the opening day for the Kemptville Farmers Market, and I personally believe that it is a little gem
Yes, it is.
of a market. We will have more vendors this year. We are a true farmers market, which means that we are affiliated with Farmers Markets of Ontario. And if you haven't been, it's every Sunday, noon to 4 on the B&H parking lot. There, I said it.
Oh, God bless you, Beth. Thank you. Thank you. Oh, my God. How could we do this event without mentioning the farmers market? In 2018, my family and Councillor Strachan's family, this is before we were elected, and another family, ambitiously thought we should have a booth at the farmers market. And for 6 months, we sold smoothies, seedlings, and specialty coffees. So I mean, the farmers market is so much part of this community now, and it grew through the pandemic like wildfire. It was insane. And in fact, our first promenade, we decided to do on the day of the farmers market because we knew they were attracting so many people to the community. We thought we can't do our first promenade without the farmers market. So thank you, Beth. It's a marvelous market. It's at the B&H parking lot, thanks to the partnership with Jim Beveridge, and we can't wait for it to get going again. Thank you.
I have some more questions
Okay.
from the online participants.
Oh, you guys are never going to be able to leave. I'm joking.
Wait, yeah.
Hard stop at 8. Hard stop at
Well, and you running again means 4 more years of doing this. Anyway, anyway, can the mayor update us on the progress, the rumored progress of the project to build a hotel at the Colonnade development? That's been
Oh,
in,
that's such a good question. Director of Planning, Amy, is here, so Amy can correct me if I have something wrong. But we had approved a site plan for a hotel at the Colonnade property, and then the pandemic hit. And as I understand it, the plans were just sort of halted, and they have not reemerged. The site plan is intact, Amy, if I'm not mistaken. So we've done everything on our part to say a big yes and not get in their way. But as all of you know, the fate of hotels over the last 2 years has been terrible. So I think some of the investment strategies around the hotels, or this hotel, may just be on pause. And really, I've had no direct interaction with the developers of that property. I think, Amy, what I can safely say is the site plan is there and we're ready when they're ready, more or less. Okay, so there we go.
Tina, you're good?
Yep.
I have one more to ask you. We talked about the $100,000 from participation.
Yes.
Do we know now the plan for how it's going to be divvied up and what that's going to?
Yes, absolutely. Council, because we were already well on our way with Riverside Park, those plans were well in hand. When we took a look at where the needs were, and is our Director of Parks here? Mark isn't here, right? Okay. Mark flagged that, in fact, we had some parks in rural hamlets, including the one in Oxford Mills, that could use new play structures, that could use some significant updating. So as a consequence, in Oxford Mills we're updating play equipment. In Oxford Station, we're updating play equipment. In Burris Rapids, we are working with the Community Association to build a half basketball court that had deteriorated significantly. In Burris Rapids, the Community Association and their sort of very large yard is owned by them. So we're going to work with them to restore their basketball court. And in Bishop's Mills, where we've had for years, if not decades, a very successful outdoor rink that's maintained by a local family who won a civic award this past year. We're rebuilding the sort of facility that brings water and light to the ice rink. So that was the thing that they deemed to be the most worthwhile. So from my perspective, many people wanted the Riverside Park stuff, but of course we were on our way with the support of development charges and some other grants. So it made sense to accelerate investments in rural hamlets and, make sure, I think one of the experiences any of us have in North Grenville is that we're an amalgamated community, and I think we've tried really hard as a council and staff to really be diligent about how we distribute investments and recognize, the different realities of where people live and the immense pride people have at living in certain hamlets. So I think this felt like it was the right thing to do.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah. Do you have any?
No.
You're good.
Yep.
And we're good online with the questions.
Okay.
So, do you have any closing remarks for us?
Oh my God.
Parting words of wisdom
Parting
from
words
Mayor
of
Peckford.
wisdom. Yes. Do I have parting words of wisdom? I think I've talked. I don't know if I've left anything out. I certainly hope not. I know I've used many words this evening. I think if there's one word that comes to mind in terms of serving this community alongside fabulous council colleagues, fabulous staff, and all of you is pride and opportunity and joy. And I don't think all of that has been evident because of the pandemic, but I just think there's so much more we can do and so much further we have to go. And I think if there's a legacy, no matter what happens in October, and elections are their own experience. I never take anything for granted, and I certainly won't in this election. And if I only have 4 years, if that's all it is, I think what I hope we've done through collaborative leadership with my council colleagues and collaboration with staff is set a new standard for what it means to have a responsive municipal government, and to set a new standard when it comes to partnerships with our community.
Nice.
And my hope is we never go back, right? It doesn't matter who's in these chairs. I think my hope is that a culture will have entrenched itself well enough that you always expect more and you always expect better. And it's always done, of course, in a respectful way. We can't deliver everything. I think we've worked really hard to keep our tax rate low while also delivering strategic investments. But I think, in democracies around the world, I think it's incumbent upon citizens of all ages, including members of my youth advisory committee, to expect a lot from their governments. And if people start writing off their governments, we're all in trouble. And I know when I came here, and I'm not trying to make this political, I did feel some cynicism, and I don't want anyone to be cynical in our community about what we can achieve together. And that's what I leave with you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll take off my glasses so I can see you. All right.
I think we have a wrap-up video.
We have a
Thank you video. Is
video.
I got a little note here. It says video. thank you to everyone who joined us tonight, for those who joined online as well. On a quiet night, if you want, it's been live streamed, but you could always go back on Facebook and watch this again, if you chose, or share it with your friends. Thank you very much, and good night for now.
So for everyone that's in the room, we have some time, a few minutes anyway, to fill up your cups, get some coffee, mingle, meet some new people, do some networking after all these years. It's a long time.
It is.
But before everyone goes, we're going to get rid of those centerpieces. So we're going to do a little game. If you
gonna
are
get up.
able to stand, stand.
Stretch
If you
out.
can't, stretch it out. So for the person sitting at this table, you're just going to pass it back and forth to yourself all night. And guess what? Surprise!